So Berserker Musashi went ahead and got an NP upgrade over on the JP version of the game, and a lot of people seem to be really mad about the buff that she got, and I don't really see why. The buff that she got is actually very, very strong because it's not only going to be increasing the amount of base damage that they're doing, but they did the one thing that I've been wanting them to do for the longest time, and that's that they gave her power mod against Saber class servant enemies. Now, I would have liked this to just be like a flat 150 power mod against just any Saber in general, but the fact that it's, 200% to 300% on just any Saber class servant in general, and she's a Berserker, means that pretty much any Saber enemy is going to be free eats for her. And the power mod, because it's 200%, essentially gives her single target damage against those Saber class enemies, as long as, they're servants, of course. And so you can functionally use her as a single target going into boss fights, which is pretty much where you are going to use her anyway. And so if anything, this seems like a very good buff that was directed in a way that kind of plays to what they want Musashi to do. Now, what I know a lot of people were wanting her to get was, say, a 30 to 50% battery. They want her to be able to compete with people like Ibuki, like people, Space Ishtar, your Summer Kama, stuff along those lines, which I understand. I get if you do want Musashi, maybe she's your favorite servant, she's your favorite farming servant to use, and you just want to use her everywhere. You want to get her to bond 15, I understand. I'm trying to use Morgan and my own Summer Ibuki everywhere because, let's be honest, you want to get your wifeys up to bond 15. I understand that, but I don't really think we need another Arts AoE unit with a 30 to 50% battery that's kind of just getting in this long line of really good loopers, because if they did give her the battery but they didn't give her the buff to her NP damage, you would see me come out here and say, oh, this is really good, this is very strong, you can use her as a looper, but then she kind of just becomes one of the loopers that you would use. Like, she wouldn't be the best one. You would still use Ibuki over her because Ibuki is also a Berserker, but she would then have the power mods because in this scenario that people want her to get the battery, she wouldn't get the buff to her NP, she wouldn't get the power mod giving her a better niche. And a lot of the stuff that Musashi does that, I think is better than Ibuki going into more difficult content, the guts plus the dodge plus the guaranteed pierce invul, pretty much allowing her to turn difficult content stages into quote-unquote farming stages, would be lost on her, and she would kind of just be viewed as, oh, well, that's another one of the Arts AoE units. I mean, she can loop really well, her NP gain's really high, but you're not going to use her over Ibuki, who's got power mods, or Melusine, who has 2 power mods, or even Space Ishtar or Summer Kama. I mean, Summer Kama has the Charm power mod that she can use on any node, and Space Ishtar is at least still stacking damage, which does make her very good with Oberon because, stacking NP damage, and then Oberon's 3rd skill is a match made in heaven, that's really good, and she wouldn't really get all that much usage. I like that Musashi is staying true to her, style of gameplay of, what, we want her to be someone that's really good going into challenge quests, because I still use her over a lot of my other AoEs. If I want to just try to blitz through a challenge quest and not really care about any of the mechanics, I will whip out my Musashi as opposed to using my Ibuki, because Ibuki's very strong in farming content, but going into more difficult content, the best thing she has is that she can remove enemy buffs, which is very strong, but not every enemy lets you do that anymore. There are a lot more enemies that are giving themselves unremovable buffs, so you actually kind of have to hang in the fight, or use someone else who's more tailored to being able to take that out, and that's where someone like Musashi comes in hand. Now, battery would also be very good for more difficult content, and allow her to maybe get by some mechanics where the boss is going to drain your NP every turn, or they drain your NP on their break bar. It would kind of allow you to have some extra, little bits of NP on standby. But I like what they did with this more. This is more sticking to Musashi's identity and keeping her a little bit separate from all the other Arts AoE units, and not have her be, the 5th best Arts AoE looper. Like, I think I've seen a pretty delusional takes out there. It's like, oh, no, she would definitely be the best one, right? She'd be crazy. It's like, yeah, her NP gain would be really nuts, but it's still not going to be enough to dethrone the other guys that have power mods or have stacking damage. You're just going to use those guys more, especially because her damage before that wasn't all that great compared to theirs, but now her natural damage without the power mod is very strong. It's kind of like the range of where Gilgamesh is at, but it's actually a little bit higher because Gil is at like 30k now post buff, and Musashi's at 33, so she's doing really good damage. And then if you find the poor sod that is a saber in your area, she is going to absolutely decimate them. And that's not also to say that you can't bring her as a farmer. You know, if you're going into a 90++ node, you can still loop her, you know, use her as a clear for, you know, maybe the 3 at the very beginning, and then if it's a saber boss at the end, she can pretty much clap them up because that power mod is very, very insane. And then, you know, you just have like a single target or another AoE to deal with the second wave. You know, that's kind of how Arts does deal with these 90++ nodes, is generally bringing 1 or 2 different DPSs to kind of deal with it accordingly. And so I think it's very, very strong. And what I think the crux of the issue is the fact that they simply did not give us the costume. I really do think that that is why everybody is so up in arms. It's because, oh, well, we didn't get the battery and she's not the looper. At least we could have gotten the costume. And yes, I understand everybody really wants the costume. I would love to get the costume. I'd love to get the boss costume. There's a lot of different things from Samurai Remnant I wish they would throw into the event, but we're not going to get everything right now. But since they're bringing reruns back, maybe next year, if this wins the rerun pull for that, you know, they'll bring out the costumes and they'll bring out, I don't know, Tamamo Aria if they don't do her for Valentine's Day. It just kind of gets to one of those things where I'm just seeing the fandom kind of complain about these things, and it's like, dog, we just gotta grow up, man. Like, the buff is good. We didn't get the costume. We'll probably get it at some point. If you had to ask me why haven't we gotten the costume, I would tell you it's probably simply because it's Berserker Musashi that has, you know, the class and everything, but it's Saber Musashi's NP, and they probably don't know who to give the costume to, because they could give the costume to Saber Musashi, because then they don't have to worry about the NP being inconsistent, but then, well, the class is a little inconsistent. We could give the outfit to the Berserker Musashi, but that's not quite right. You know, Berserker Musashi and Samurai Remnant's not speeding around on a jet ski or anything. You know, she's still using the normal NP because it's not Summer Musashi, so at least we got a buff in the first place. It's supposed to just be, all right, Saber Musashi is summoned in the Berserker class. She's just Berserker for that Grail War. And so I absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt that if they put out this buff, everybody would be like, this buff is very crazy, it's insanely good. And then we also got the costume, nobody would complain. Not a single person would complain, but it's just kind of childish. We'll get it at some point. Just relax, bro. It's a good buff. It makes her a lot better. I know that I'm going to be using her a lot more. I mean, I already do use her a lot going into CQ content, but I'll also be excited to use her in farming content still, you know, switching it up a little bit, because Musashi does have just good enough NP to raw refund. She doesn't really need the battery most of the time in most standard 333 nodes. And even if you don't loop, like say you only get like 90% back against Berserkers, or even 80% in worst cases, that's what we have different mystic codes for, different mystic codes that give you NP gain, or you can get up to 20% battery. The new summer one has a split 10 and 10 battery if you're having a little bit of trouble at an NP1 Musashi. That's why we have mystic codes and everything. You know, I've never really had a problem with Musashi. I think she's been doing good. So bottom line, the buff is good. I understand that, you know, there's delusional people that are like, oh, if she had the battery, she'd be the best. She wouldn't even be the best. That doesn't matter. I know you're upset about the costume, but you gotta grow up, all right? You just gotta grow up and stop throwing a hissy fit every single time you don't get what you want on FGO. You know, I understand that I'm guilty of that as well. You know, when Takeda came out and he wasn't quite what I was expecting him to be, I'm talking about Takeda Shingen for Guda Guda, not Yamato Takeru for the Samurai Remnant event. When he came out, you know, I kind of threw a little bit of a hissy fit, but I was also kind of playing that up for content reasons. You know, I was like, it's probably funnier if I kind of just make fun of him more than just say he's all right, because everyone else was going to say that he was all right. I might as well make a little bit of a spectacle out of it, and I still summon for him because he looks dope. But regardless, you know, I know I'm going to have a ton of people in the comments are going to be like, but I still wanted the costume. Yeah, I want the costume too, but we'll get it at some point. It's fine. Relax. Like always, leave a like on the video after I, you know, basically just having to be the daycare teacher for the whole FGO community. Leave a like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace late, guys.